Hello, and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to read Hench, an excerpt of Hench by Natalie Zina Walschots, and this is already out. It was in September, so it came out in September, and stuff, but I'm going to read the stuff, the first chapter, but it's kind of a long chapter, so I'm probably gonna read like a little bit of the chapter, but not all of it. So just to get a sense of the writing style. So when the temp agent called, I was struggling to make the math work. In one window, I was lodged into my checking account. In the other, I was whittling down my grocery delivery shopping cart into something that would fit into the sliver of overdraft I had available. I kept dragging different configurations of noodles and vegetables in and out of the cart, grimly trying to scurry, until one of several outstanding invoices was paid. I had my phone right next to me with the ringer on as loud as it would go. So when the call came in, it scared the crap out of me. I fumbled to answer, leaving greasy fingerprints on the cracked glass of my phone screen. And Kromelov, I croaked. Am I speaking with the Napoleon? Fucking hell, I hissed before I could stop myself. I coughed. Sorry, yes, this is she. Do you prefer your civilian name? There was a palpable distaste in the voice. On the other end of the call, some of the recruiters took their work too seriously. If you don't mind, I tried to sound breezy, but my voice was still hoarse and anxious. I'll make note of that. The temp agency recruiter lied. I closed my eyes for a long moment, regretting once again filling in the Atlantis section of my Hench profile. 2 years later, the rookie mistake hunted me in the form of every recruiter addressing me by the nerd's idea of what a villain name might be. At least the punishment for Humberus was on brand. Ms. Traumatized Love, this is a courtesy call to inform you that there is a screening section at the Luther Street branch of the temp agency that includes opportunities that match your skill set. Are you able to attend? When is the screening? I hunted on my desk for my phone for a moment to check my schedule before realizing it was in my hand. I opened a new tab with my calendar. 11 a.m., Ms. Traumatized Love. Today, that call time is less than an hour away. Is that going to be a problem? Not at all. That didn't sound right. It didn't. I'll definitely be there. I wouldn't have time to shower. I decided showing up covered in dry shampoo and desperation was better than missing a chance to pick up a contract. It had been a few weeks since I last worked. The villain I was semi-regularly henching for I had the largest aquatic base rated, and almost all of the henches working off-site had our contracts canceled to cover the cost of the rebuild. It was nothing unusual, but I had gone just long enough between jobs that I was getting a little uncomfortable. You can only eat so much instant ramen. We look forward to seeing you in person, Miss Traumatized Love. The recruiter lied again before hanging up. In a tiny in the tiny tile rectangular of my bathroom, I discovered last night's winged owl eyeliner was in decent shape and could be repaired. With a lot of mouthwash, fresh lipstick, and a savory but vampy bun. I looked almost presentable. I squeezed myself into my tightest suit, tweed, and called my cab. Oscar was a new driver. There weren't a ton of cabbies who would work with us, so it was hard for any villains who couldn't hire a personal driver to get a ride in the city. It turns out that when some asshole in tights picks up the rideshare you're in and flips it over like a confused tortoise, that's a one-star review. A few cabbies, though, decide that being able to double their rates was worth the threat of getting their car ripped in half by some costume dirtbag. I'd have to break up with my last driver when he got a little fond of me and told me I was too nice for this life. When they started getting attached, it's time to move on. Next thing you know, you're developing a savior complex and turning you in for your own good. I was already grocery shopping in the middle of the night after the same cashier saw me buying a single bag of Doritos one too many, and started giving me life advice. I've been emotionally preparing myself up get, to give up my favorite pizza joint if the delivery guy kept being friendly. Oscar, though, I liked a lot so far. He barely spoken a handful of words since I started calling on him. I could count on his curt nod and quiet ride whenever I was going. I also got to admire the shocking thickness of his eyebrows in the rear view mirror. Halfway to temp agency, my phone started to vibrate aggressively. It was June. Feeling lucky? I hope so, because I feel like shit. You on your way? Could you hurry? I'm fucking freezing. Are you getting coffee? I didn't write back, but instructed Oscar to take a detour through a drive-thru and order a pair of too expensive lattes. I spotted June a block away from the temp agency, tucked around in the corner to keep to keep to where am I? To keep out of line of sight from anyone in the building. I asked Oscar to drop me off there. Her body was curled around the intense February chill, her face turned towards the brick wall in front of her. Her smart navy blue trench coat was too light for the weather, and the tips of her fingers were shaking from the cold as she held a cigaretto. June had been hunting longer than I had. She dipped a toe in the disastrously end of the freelance world for the first time almost 3 years ago, and had been invaluable when I followed suit. She was the first person to admit to me that she worked at the Hench, and surprised me by generously helping me through my temp agency application. I was a shaking mess before my first intake interview, expecting a room full of hardened and battle-scarred evildoers. There was a remarkable lack of black lyrica and metal masks when I finally walked through the doors, though. Just desperate attempts, who looked as likely to have decent typing speeds as the demolition experience. She made fun of me relentlessly for being so scared, and we quickly became inseparable. She had a rough patch recently, much longer and deeper than my raid relative a few weeks out of work. June had powers and her skill set was extremely specific. That meant she was both expensive and niche. Feast or famine. There had been too much of the latter, too little of the former. Her shoulders, even hunched against the cold, showed showed, showed a lot of tension. I unfolded myself in the cab and strode towards her, clearing my throat so I wouldn't startle her. She flickered her cigaretto into a small pile of salty snow, and I heard it sizzle. She reached for the coffee with grabby hands. Her eyes were a little bloodshot. "You look like crap," she said. She took a sip of the latte, leaving lipstick marks on the plastic top of the go-to mug. "Probably," I agreed, too cheerfully. They give you no, they give you any idea what to expect? No, just that something fit my profile. They tell you anything? She shook her head. Same as you. She took another swallow and flinched. Drinking this is like eating a vanilla pod zest. I told them to go light on the shit syrupy. Syrup. Sorry. It's fine. June's voice seemed especially wary. She had an advanced sense of smell and taste, which sometimes made her valuable as a hench, but usually just made her life miserable, especially in the city. There was a shine right under her nose. She'd spread a mint chapstick there, a trick doctors and coroners used beneath surgical masks to block out some of the odors around her. No one tells you how much super senses hurt, she explained once. It's fucking agony. You know, some lucky household can't feel pain. Like, not as an ability. The pain receptors don't work. So, you get these toddlers breaking toes and chewing off their own tongue before they can stop fucking with themselves. Turns out if you can't feel pain, you can't smell either. Think about a bad, uh, think, think about a bad smell. How you recoil from it. Does it hurt? It's like that all the time. We've both been drunk as balls, and I babbled about how sorry I was until she threw what left of her drink at me. She was even worse at feelings than I was. She'd been wearing nose plugs to the bar that night, like a swimmer. She never said so, but I suspected the reason June moved to Hench in the first place was that the work she tended to get evil doing was generally less unpleasant. She worked for Border Patrol, one, to sniff out explosives in the airport. Mostly she found coke and contraband cured meats. She was miserable there, surrounded by the smells of body and breath, of everyone coming off long flights and of dirty clothes, of airport food. There was also the aroma of panic and exhaustion. Mostly though she hated dealing with cops. Now she helped villains design packaging her sense of smell couldn't penetrate, or sniffed their drinks at parties to make sure the liquid hasn't been dosed. In between jobs, she smoked like a chimney, dampening her sense of smell and taste at tiny, merciful increments. "Let's get inside," I said, drinking my coffee and watching her shake. She shrugged. "Let's get over with it." I pushed The heavy doors opened and we walked through them together, the heels of our boots clicking in time on the wet tile floor. The ancient temp agency's reception desk was a long, bleak room. Smaller, windowless interview rooms branched off of it, reminding me of a holding cells. One of the silky fluorescent lights flickered. My eyes, my eye twitched. There weren't many of us in the morning, barely a dozen, in moody coats, unnecessary sunglasses, and sharp shuttered suits, chipped manicures, and threaded eyebrows, all doing what we could to cast the illusion we were intimidating. No one was sitting. Two temp wranglers sat behind the desk, a man in an ill-fitting blue suit who was trying to make himself look less baby-faced by growing a thin blonde beard, and a frightening neat woman with a glossy black hair pecking irritably at a tablet. June and I elbowed our way closer to the front pack, making a point of taking up space while trying not to look too keen. I smiled at a man in what appeared to be a low-key, hard-boiled detective cosplay when he glared at me. "How bad do you think it's going to be?" I asked him quietly. Absimo. Half of us leaving without work? She tossed her head, gesturing to the hench hopefuls behind her. "At least, I say 2/3 walk out of here with nothing." The man in the blue suit stood, and the muttering around me quieted. I stood a little straighter. "Where are our drivers?" he asked. Three people stepped forward, a broad-shouldered blonde woman with a buzz cut and two young men who scowled at each other, both wearing leather jackets and white t-shirts. Their matching perfect pompadours trembled as they eyed each other aggressively, like the wattles on a pair of roosters. "Wore the same dress to the prom, I see," June said in my ear, and I nearly choked on the coffee in my mouth. The woman looked up from her table. Her eyes were shark black. "We need a chauffeur with first-class getaway, who has a stunt background." The blonde woman raised her hand. "I'm certified." She dropped her arms back to her side. Her dress shirt was rolled up to her forearms, and her biceps strained the material. It made my stomach flutter. I have a lot of on-set work, mostly commercial. "You got references?" "Of course." "Let's head out to the track." The blue-suited man started to walk out of the room, gesturing for her to follow. He paused to glance back at the two men, who looked even more deflated than they had moments before. "Sorry guys, next time." The two disappointed drivers turned to leave at the same time and had to endure the awkwardness of stomping out together. Both refused to pause and let the other go first. "It'll be a summer wedding," I predicted. June choked on her coffee. The woman with short hair followed the blue suit out the back of the temp agency. Watched her carefully close the heavy doors so they wouldn't make too much noise behind her. I imagined her being led to the supercar she'd been driving for the rest of the day. If she was any good at it at all, I expected the job would be permanent. Good drivers got snapped up and were relatively rare. I found myself hoping I would see her back. that she'd get a good assignment and have a long lifespan. And I realized with a small pang that would mean I wouldn't get to look at her well-muscled arms again. I found it sad when someone kept turning up at the agency every few weeks looking for more work, like me. The remaining temp wrangler was spitting out assignments, rapid fire. Most of them were skill specific. A call for safecracker, another for network security specialist. The last one made me scan the crowd for a face I knew. "What the hell is Greg?" I said, a little louder than I meant to. "That's a perfect job for him." She didn't open her mouth to answer, but then the woman with the tablet said she needed someone with exceptional sensory perception, and June's attention swung away from me and towards the promise of work. They discussed details I couldn't make out, and after a few minutes June signed the surface of the tablet with the tip of one finger. She walked back looking positively jolly. 6 weeks on-site, possibility of extension, she told me, sweeping her box braids back over her shoulders and rubbing the back of her neck to get rid of some of the tension she'd been carrying. On-site, though? Yeah. See, I'm not a coward like you. I'm sorry. I am still rather attached to my mortal well-being. Stella, eh? In traumatized love, I glared at June instead of responding and walked to the desk to get my assignment. It was too late to correct the way the temp wrangler had said my name, but it still annoyed the crap out of me. I forced a ludicrous smile. "We have a remote data entry assignment if you're interested." The tone of her voice indicated she didn't think I would be, but she was wrong. I was willing to scoop to all manner of soul-destroying work that didn't require me to put on clothes. Just what, just what I'm looking for. Mr. Foley, she didn't bother making eye contact. "Sign here. You'll be emailed login credentials. 60 hours to start. The possibility of indefinite extension." There was something about the way she said it that indicated she felt she'd given out or something. I liked the sound of that. She rolled her eyes. I cringed. I walked back to June, who grabbed my arm when I showed her my assignment. I could feel her nails through the fabric of my jacket. She would be working on site for the same villain who hired me for remote work. "Let's get breakfast," she hissed. "I'm picking the place out. I'm sick of your bougie white girl brunch." I have no idea what that is. As she walked towards the doors, the temp wrangler announced that there were 3 other positions available. The rest of them would compete for. I didn't envy the poor assholes, the gauntlet of micro-interviews. As soon as I touched the heavy metal door handle, it was wrenched out of my hand. I wobbled it in my heels, and Greg, the out-of-work network administrator in front of me, had to draw up short to keep from slamming into us in his hurry to get in the building. "If you hear about the security gig," June said cheerfully, "some rando, a quarter talented as you nabbed it." She took visible pleasure in crushing disappointment that blossomed on his face. He backed up, and I let the door slammed behind her. Shit. He yanked his hand through his dark, messy hair. Shit. It was one of the first he called, she said. I couldn't tell if that was meant to comfort or turn the screws a little tighter. Probably the latter. June started walking down the sidewalk brightly, and I followed. Greg skidded after us. He was quiet for a long, sour moment, sulking. Then, I was on the phone with the Scarlet Hood, he said. He's worse than my fucking mother. Oh, I called over my shoulder. Greg jogged a couple paces to catch up. He called me yesterday because he forgot how to inject the CD from a drive. This morning? I shit you not. He'd forgotten to charge his laptop and couldn't get it to turn on. June laughed. Well, finding work after a drought combined with Greg's misery had put her in a great mood. I elbowed him and he yelled, Come with us. We're getting breakfast. Sure. He shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his down coat and hunched his shoulders. Like I appreciate his keeps on his like I appreciate he keeps me on retainer, but it's costing me better work now. I nodded. He should have just hired you. Make you a hench. Greg's head jerked up. Fuck that. He already calls me at 3 a.m. If I was his hench, my life would officially be hell. Greg's phone rang the moment we reached the doors of the diner. He mouthed the curse and then fumbled in his pocket while June and I escaped the cold, and let the yawning surface lead us to a booth. The comforting vinyl seats were tacky and creaked as they sat down. They ordered Greg a tea and greedily accepted the coffee that was placed in front of me. Tech support supervillains. June watched him, eyes narrowed through the window as he paced outside in the cold. Can you fucking imagine? It's not like data entry is any more glamorous, though. At last, I heard Greg ask, Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? He winced and pulled the phone away from his ear in response. Data entry is less risky, June said, scanning the laminate menu. Maybe I wouldn't mind a bit of risk. She flicked her eyes up at me. I was surprised that she was. That's new. Growing a spine? No, just getting bored. She made a non-committal sound. I looked back at Greg's impatient, pleading face. He caught my eye and mimicked shooting himself in the head. His first two fingers pointed to his temple. You like being bored, though, Josephine said. I think it would stress you the fuck out. Probably. But I felt a little deflated. She raised a pointer finger. But if you want some on-site work, I'll refer you. Oh, think about it. Okay. Want to make fun of those dudes on Tinder until Greg comes back? Grinned, yeah. I singed closer to June, and she unlocked her phone. He looks like he was just arrested for shitting himself at a Denny's. He looks like a bear in a kid's show who is always also a cop. He looks like a muffin who is here to teach me about sharing. We were crackling by the time the hood mercifully let Greg off the phone, and he bobbled in, stomping his feet in the doorway to warm up. He started chewing through the fucking cable. I swear to Christ. Greg snarled, swinging himself into the booth. I inhaled some of my coffee, and June had to pound me on the back to keep me from choking. And that is part of chapter 1. And this is already out. Be sure to look for it in local stores or your local library. And check this out if you are interested. And yeah. And subscribe to this channel and thumbs up if you like this video, and comment down below if you have read this book. And yeah, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.